So when we start preparing for UPSC Civil Services exam, as a beginner, we have few initial hiccups, and one of the most important hiccups, rather the more serious one, is for a student to understand that which particular news piece or a particular article on a given day in a given newspaper is important for this UPSC Civil Service exam. At the same time, it is again little difficult for student to understand that for which particular stage of this exam, pre, mains or interview, this article is relevant. Now, keeping this in view, we at Raj IAS have planned a series of lectures in which we will help the beginners to understand that how a particular news piece or article is to be read, then how and in what all ways you need to elaborate your knowledge or your understanding about that article, what all dimensions you need to cover, and in what all perspectives you should think beyond the article so that your journey becomes more meaningful and enjoyable. In this series, the first article that we have chosen today is the one given by none other but a very eminent writer, Mr. C. Rajamohan, and the heading is Seeing the New South Asia. Now, to understand the perspective and the related issues that one need to cover, let's start the course here, this particular course of video series in which we will be interacting with you and giving you an opportunity to ask questions in the comment section. So the article is basically talking about, has India lost South Asia? And it is very important for UPSC aspirants to first understand that what region we are specifically talking about and in what historical context. So India's South Asia's dilemma, losing South Asia. The narrative of this article by C. Rajamohan sir is talking about India losing South Asia from the nostalgia of British Raj's hegemony over the region, the Indian subcontinent and beyond. Now, if you have done your modern Indian history, great, and if you haven't done it yet, let me give you an idea here. While the British were conquering India, they were not confined to what we know India today as. There was no Pakistan, there was no Bangladesh, there was no Burma. That was all part of British India up to 1935. Burma was part of British India, and Pakistan, Bangladesh, they emerged in 1947. Now, while the British controlled these territories directly, starting from the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, that Durand line, and going up to the McMahon line with China. Now, this entire subcontinent was part of British India. The British, through many efforts, have brought the territories along the Nepalese border under control, and they had some kind of mutual relationship with the Nepalese as well, the Anglo-Nepalese War and the resultant Treaty of Segoli. Similarly, they have fought 3 wars in Burma and brought the territory under their control. They sent young husband expedition during the time of Lord Curzon, and they had control over the external affairs of Tibet as well. Similarly, on the western side, the British tried to keep Afghanistan under their control. They fought 3 Anglo-Afghan wars, though they were not very successful. But yes, why they were fighting all these wars? Why they wanted to control all this subcontinent and the territories beyond it? Now, there are many things that you need to keep in mind. One of the primary factors was the fear of Russia, what the Brits used to call Russophobia. They never wanted the Russian Empire to expand. Now, the question is that why they did not want the British Empire to expand. Now, there are 2 more things that you need to know before you understand the implications of this article. 1, the heartland theory. 2, the sea lanes of communication. Now, Britain, while ruling over India, understood the strategic significance of Indian Ocean, 1, and they never wanted that the Russians should get any access to the Indian Ocean either through the Mediterranean or the Red Sea region or from any other way. Similarly, the heartland theory as given by Mackinder, it tells us that how important the Central Asia is. So the British never wanted Russia to have that free access to Central Asia. And all the British policies in the subcontinent evolved in the background of these ideas. Now, while British were here, they were a powerful entity. They were very strong. Their presence was very strong militarily, economically, and they could keep the entire region under their single control. However, when they left the subcontinent after the independence of the region, and due to the complexities of the Cold War, the region became more destabilized. Now, the question is, in what perspective India evolved and how the neighbors started looking towards India at the time of independence 1947, or at the time when India lost a war against China in 1962, or when India defeated Pakistan first in 1965 and then in 1971 and helped in the creation of Bangladesh. With the change of this perception of India, the region's response to India continued to change. Now, this was not just the idea that it is the perception of the neighbors towards India that is changing the geostrategic alignment of the region. It is also about the global implications, the global developments. For example, the disintegration of USSR in 1991. It had its own implications for the region, for the geostrategic implications for the South Asian region, right? So we need to understand this article in a very, very broad sense, in a very broad manner, to appreciate that to what an extent this article is relevant for our exam. And this kind of articles are also very important for PSIR optional students. So I will try to keep some part in this lecture for them as well. So guys, now the question here is that there are some misconceptions which we need to understand. There are two types of people, one the hawks and the other the doves. Who are hawks? They believe that the neighbors, when they defy or they try to disrespect India, India should act very boldly. They believe in the strong power idea. Whereas the doves, they blame that because India is already behaving in a little stronger manner, aggressive manner, assertive manner, so the neighbors are becoming little more hesitant. They are being pushed away, and they are the ones who believe in soft power. Now you have to understand, be it a hawk or a dove, they talk about power. One talk about hard power, the other talk about soft power. So neither tough nor nice policies work. You always have to have that, kind of a balance. What C. Raja Mohan sir is trying to tell us through this article is that India's regional challenges are structural. There are some structural things that we need to keep in mind, right? The structure of the region is one specific. And when we talk about structure, there are some specific theories. I will talk about them. And this requires fundamental shifts in the approach as far as India's foreign policy is concerned. Now, when we talk about the hawks and the doves in foreign policy, I have prepared a detailed table. What I will do, I will attach it in the comment section on this YouTube video, and I will also upload it on my Twitter handle. You can go and follow it there, and you will get the document there where you can also engage in a very healthy discussion with me. So if we talk about the hawks, if we talk about their approach towards a particular conflict, they see conflict as inevitable and natural. So they are kind of realist in their approach. Whereas doves, they see that conflict as avoidable and undesirable. They are little idealistic in their approach. Now if I talk about the example, the US invasion of Iraq or the Israel's military response, these are the hawkish responses, right? Use of military force. So the hawks, they are more willing to use military force, whereas the doves, they are hesitant to use the military force. They want diplomacy to survive or to prevail. So when India's Doklam standoff with China or India's surgical strike against Pakistan, now you understand, these are hawkish stances. So similarly, this entire table you can read from the notes and you can understand. I have made it very student friendly, and this is missing in the article. So unless you understand these terms, understanding the article will not be adequately sufficient for your journey for UPSC. Similarly, I have given you an idea of these theories. some of the important theories like structuralism, post-structuralism, functionalism, post-functionalism. If I talk about only the structuralism as a theory of international relations from world perspective, now what I have to understand, what it says is it focuses on underlying structures, that is alliances, power blocks shaping international relations, that there is United Nations, there is G7, there is BRICS, there is SAARC. They talk about these kind of institutions or alliances, Quad more recently, right? And when I talk about from Indian perspective, it explains India's alignment during the Cold War, aligning with the Soviet bloc due to structural factors like bipolarity. So India did not per se join any power bloc, but yes, there was a tilt towards Soviet Union, right? So example, Cold War alliances like NATO versus Warsaw Pact and India's close ties with USSR. So it was a structure that was evolving. There was Cold War. In the background of Cold War, the structure developed that there were two groups, two alliances emerged, the NATO and the Warsaw Pact. And then there was something that a structure developed that India, instead of joining any of the power blocks, tried to remain non-aligned. But at the same time, there was a tilt towards USSR or erstwhile Soviet Union. Then there is post-structuralism, functionalism. These you can read and understand. In case of doubt, you can anytime call me through a comment. You can ask me a doubt, right? Now coming back to the article by C. Raja Mohan sir, what are the factors that shape South Asia? So first thing that we need to understand, there is that history of partition of the subcontinent. Right, when the British left India, they created West and East Pakistan, and that created new sovereignties and unresolved border disputes which hinder cooperation. India and Pakistan are still having so many problems about the borders, about the areas, and Pakistan's focus on Kashmir impedes regional integration efforts. So Pakistan will not agree to come and sit on the same table with India to talk about trade, commerce, and to talk about environment unless we give them the space to raise the Kashmir issue. And even if there is consensus among all the members of a given organization, be it SAARC or be it any other organization, even at the UN level, Pakistan will always try to sneak in the idea of Kashmir and bring the entire dialogue or the entire talk process to a standstill. There is economic divide. Early development choices led to autarky and limited economic ties. When the region started having its sovereign existence after 1947, so there was the time when you were more inward looking. You were trying to work like on the principles of export substitution, and you were trying to evolve your own economy. That made you little self-centered, right? The entire region. Scrutinized borders further hampered regional trade. Because of the disputed borders, you cannot have that free access, free trade visas. Then Pakistan's reluctance to engage economically with India remains a hurdle. Now Pakistan wants first to resolve the political dispute rather than to talk about the economic integration of the region. Then we have to understand another aspect touched in the article, shifting power dynamics, the waning of Raj era deference. The neighbors now, be it Nepal, be it Bangladesh, be it Bhutan, or you talk about any country, the neighbors no longer see India as an extension of a dominant power. At that time, it was British India, a very strong power, right? But then gradually when you became independent, and unfortunately when you lost one war against China in 1962, the perceptions of the neighbors started to change. Moreover, the more you emphasized on gaining more and more power, the idea of the neighbors towards India as an entity started and kept on undergoing change from time to time. Now, if we talk about the factors that shape South Asia today, there is one very strong concern put forward by C. Raja Mohan sir, that India's regional vision, Akhand Bharat and integrated subcontinent concepts. Now, this raises some kind of suspicion about India's intentions. Is India aiming to overpower the region? I think that this idea has been taken a little too seriously in this article. India is not saying that we are going to integrate the entire region. We are not claiming the entire region to become part of the Indian Union. The idea here is to get back what was rightfully ours. What is rightfully ours? We are talking about Pakistan occupied Kashmir to some extent here, right? Beyond that, it is not the idea that we want to change the maps or we want to change the geostrategic alliances or we want to change the realities of the subcontinent. Neighbors perceive these visions as threat to their sovereignty, and they are little mistaken in this, because India as a nation has never aspired for these kind of things. Our vision is very clear: live in peace, live and let live in peace. We do not want anyone to disturb our peace. We do not want anyone to threaten our security, our sovereignty, our integrity. So we want them to respect us, and we respect them, and we had always been respecting the sovereignty, integrity and security of our neighbors. There are some external influences. China's growing economic and military presence poses significant challenges, and India is concerned about it for obvious reasons, and so many other regional players are also concerned. The Middle East rising influence adds another layer of complexity. C. Raja Mohan sir is trying to tell us that India's idea of this Akhand Bharat is creating some kind of tensions in the region against India, but at the same time, China's and Middle East rise is further complicating the situation in this region. Now, moving forward, C. Raja Mohan sir says that India needs to discard the old South Asia idea. We need to accept the subcontinent's transformation and adapt policies accordingly, that yes, these are independent sovereign nations, but I think that we already know it and we already agree to it. India's relations with Bhutan, India's relations with Afghanistan, India's relations with Bhutan, Nepal, all these neighboring countries, they are not the hangover of the British time. These are as per the new realities. Focus on gaining ground in the new regional reality. India's strength should be possess the capabilities to secure its interest and expand influence. So coming back to the idea, like the doves, he is talking about in this article about soft power influence rather than hard power influence. He emphasizes on the needed shifts. So what he says is move beyond nostalgia and self-referential narratives that India had the right to, guide the foreign policies or to treat some of the neighbors as the protectorate. But I don't think that India has been behaving in one such way in the past. Develop strategies based on a comprehensive understanding of the region's dynamics and build trust and cooperation with neighbors based on natural respect and shared interest. So India's foreign policy or India's behavior in the region or at the global level had always been rooted in these things, be it the idea of Panchsheel, be it the idea of Gujarat doctrine, be it the idea of Krishnan doctrine. This has always been the story with India's foreign policy. It is only a kind of perception that who is looking towards India's foreign policy as a hawk or as a dove. Now, let's try understand. There are some of the examples for the UPSC students that they need to keep in mind when they read this article. Partition's impact on India-Pakistan relations, you need to analyze the Kashmir issue as a consequence of partition and its implications for the regional cooperation. Pakistan is not letting any other initiative become fruitful unless they get their idea of Kashmir fruitified, which is not acceptable, which is not desirable, which is not possible. Balancing China's influence is very important, not just for India, but for the entire region. We need to discuss India's strategic options in the light of China's Belt and Road Initiative and its growing presence in South Asia, which threatens the safety of the sea lanes of communication, which threatens the free trade idea itself. Then we need to understand the building of regional partnerships. We need to examine India's initiatives like BIMSTEC and Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal in the context of fostering regional cooperation and economic integration. We cannot overlook all these things while we read this article. Now, when I come to critically analyze this article and try to find out the limitations, I am no one to challenge the prudence and the intelligence of C. Raja Mohan sir. But at the same time, it is very simple that sir has his own vision. But as a UPSC aspirant, you have to be little more neutral. You just cannot have one-sided approach. So here we need to understand that what has been done, this article has tried to oversimplify the historical bias, right? It is very kind of He's tried to oversimplify it. Myth of Raj era hegemony. The article romanticizes the British Raj control over South Asia as natural and desirable, that everybody accepted it because Britain was a superpower, ignoring its oppressive nature and overlooking the complex historical processes that led to the subcontinent's present diversity. Right? We have to understand that the reality that British Raj was not a democratic system. Then, ignoring international factors. The focus on external actors like China and Pakistan neglects India's own internal challenges. In this article, we have not touched the internal challenges such as the political polarization, economic disparities and social tensions that contribute to regional instability. If there is Northeast that remains unstable, if there is Northeast that remains volatile, your Act-East policy cannot actually be acted upon. So this is something that is missing in this article. Then misconstruing regional dynamics. There is something, misinterpretation seems to have crept in while we talk about the negative developments. The article portrays events like the Maldives' request for troop withdrawal as signs of India's decline. We have to understand that now Maldives as a sovereign country has its rights. They do not want the forces to stay there for long. That's understandable. Failing to acknowledge legitimate concerns about sovereignty and strategic autonomy among smaller nations. Now you have to understand that if they want that Indian Army or Indian Navy should not have their bases there, and as a responsible actor we are agreeing to it, but at the same time we are not letting the relations spoil to the extent where there is no trade, where there is no interaction. This is very mature on part of Indian establishment to maintain the relations, to maintain the balance, and it has to be understood that this at best be a kind of a transition in the relations, and the relations can be mended and they can get back to the original, right? Then overlooking regional diversity, then mischaracterizing Pakistan. You just cannot ignore all these things, right? There is regional diversity. You can read it out and understand it. Now there is lack of nuance in the solutions in this article. What this article is trying to do, it is trying to project a binary framing of India's options. Now what it means that they are trying to present a false dichotomy between tough and nice policies, overlooking the possibilities of nuanced and flexible approaches based on mutual respect and shared interests. Now this is very important to understand. India's interest with Afghanistan, India's interest with Bangladesh, India's interest with Pakistan to some extent, they are not to be understood only in a binary form. Then it ignores the existing initiatives that India have taken. I will show those existing initiatives, right? The most important being the neighborhood first policy. And then there is missing progressive vision. The article is not giving us a progressive vision. It tells us that India needs to mend itself. Look at these initiatives. With Bangladesh, the Maitri Setu, it improved connectivity and trade. With Bhutan, the increased development assistance, strengthening the economic ties and mutual dependence. With Maldives, there is joint maritime patrols and disaster relief cooperation, building trust and addressing security concerns. If I talk about Nepal, reconstruction assistance after 2015 earthquake, fostering goodwill and partnership. Then when I talk about Sri Lanka, economic aid and infrastructure project which boost trade and investment. How can I ignore all these initiatives? So sir's article has much to it which we need to understand, appreciate, and at the same time we need to look beyond, understand the limitations, and then prepare a more holistic answer, be it for our mains, be it for our interview. I hope this series will help you. You can follow us on YouTube, you can follow me on my Insta channel, you can follow me on my Twitter handle, and all the links are there. You can go, click on them and get all these articles and enjoy them. That will make your UPSC journey little more easier, little more comfortable, and make you little more confident. Best of luck.